Welcome, friends and family, to another blog. We've reached episode 6, so this is blog 6, week ending 3rd of April 2022. It's been a pretty busy week and not all good, I'm afraid, but I'm going to fill you in as we go along. But as normal, we'll get this news out of the way. It date stamps this blog for me, so I sort of know what was going on that week by a few articles. The war, that continues. There's a withdrawal of troops, apparently. It's noticeable in the north. But the Russians are leaving mines as they leave their territories, causing all sorts of problems. Not great, that, is it? I mean, leaving mines, just for anybody to stamp over. Also, Russian missiles hit 2 cities in the center of Ukraine yesterday. That doesn't sound too much like a hasty removal of troops to me. So let's hope this war ends soon. I hate the news at the moment. It's awful. COVID. Now, this is another big one, because tell you what, I've seen more of my colleagues on social media telling me that they've got COVID and they now have to self-isolate. Very worrying, that, especially when you see 5 or 6 in your own working town saying they're not coming into work. You start to think, how quickly is that going to spread to me? But apparently the infections are an all-time high. 1 in 13 in England are now infected, and just as all that's going on, the majority of free testing ended on Friday. Now, that's not a big issue for me, working for the government and in an office, because I get the testing kits free. But for families, that's atrocious, and I think it's £10 for free tests the last time I heard about it. You've got to really then start thinking about when I'm going to take those tests. What about the people that have to go into nursing homes and visit loved ones? That's going to be another expense, and we've got so much expense at the moment. You're now going to probably see your loved ones less. Terrible. World Cup. England could face Scotland or Wales depending on the playoffs. That, I'm not a biggie on football, no matter what anybody says, but it'll be interesting if England do have to face off against Wales or Scotland. I'd prefer them to be in different groups so that you can see those teams play later on. But we'll see what happens with that. The energy sites. Now, if anybody doesn't know, April 1st was when the new prices kicked in. All the websites crashed as everybody tried to get their meter readings in. Well, if the energy people didn't realise by now that nobody wants to pay over a fortune on what they're paying for their energy, God help them. What I did was I tried to get my reading through, but being as I'm at work, it's a bit more difficult. So I took a photograph and emailed it to myself so that I've got a date stamp. Taking a picture of the paper next to your meter reading is, to be quite honest, bollocks. I mean, I could keep the paper from Friday and do the reading on Wednesday, couldn't I? It doesn't really date stamp anything unless you're some sort of terrorist who thinks that works. And then the first news article that I actually heard on Monday was the slap that was heard around the world because the Oscars were on, and Will Smith went up to Chris Rock and slapped him around the face for off-cuff joke to his wife, who's got a problem with hair growth. I forgot what they call it, alopecia or something. Anyway, they both apologised. No charges were pressed, and Will Smith has now resigned from the Academy of Arts, Film Arts, and I dare say that will go down in history. Nobody will remember the films much, you know, from a historic point of view. It will definitely be the Oscars where Will Smith slapped Chris Rock round the face. That's the news. So, a little bit about... Sorry, I need that still. A little bit about what's going on with me. I think I was probably at my lowest ebb on Thursday. Just to let you know that I didn't know if my grievance with the company for my job title would be 10 working days or 10 normal days, you know, from the moment of the interview. But it seems like it's 10 working days, and 10 working days is Tuesday. So I'm going through again this weekend, not knowing what's going on, and it's just another angst to add to everything else that's going on in my life at the moment. But I always find it difficult at the end of the month, and one of those reasons is although I have weekly meetings and I have daily meetings with suppliers, the end of month meeting with my team is always a round robin of everybody going around the board and saying what have they done this week, as a sort of a spur you on type thing. And every time, even though I'm a manager and everything, all my job entails at the moment is doing searches that other managers ask me to do. You know, can you help with this search on this? Can you help with this search on that? Can you do the business as usual task on this and give me the figures? So while everybody else is saying, oh, I've improved this template, I've made the database more accurate by paring down duplicates, all of that sort of stuff, my simple answer has been no change, business as usual, done the searches that I've been asked to do. And it's a bit soul destroying because I was such in control of what I did previously. I knew that people couldn't work in their houses during the pandemic unless I got laptops out, and most of the managers didn't care about what the figures were because the most important thing was keeping everybody running during the pandemic. So there was no monthly round robins. There was a couple of days, are you okay, do you need any assistance from us, which made me feel great. But every month I'm now getting to the end of where I'm working, getting to the meeting and going, it's the same as last month, why do you keep asking me? So I was probably at a very low ebb on Thursday. So I decided that I'm going to have a day off on Monday, because when I go in on Tuesday I expect to see an email about my job. So that's where I am in regards to my job. So not a great week, and I just hope for better news next week. It was really nice to see a couple of my friends, Mainmeister and Panther, have a 2-hour chat. Saw that on Friday. I was mentioned. Very nice of you guys. Thank you very much. I'm surprised that nobody mentioned anything about our singing the week before, wishing Panther a happy birthday, but I hope he had a great one. It was nice to hear them waffle on about games, their health kick that they're in at the moment. I was a bit in sorrow really when it comes to their health kick, because as most people know, and my family need to know from this video, my health is not great. I can't do the things that other people can do. I'm going to get one of my problems sorted out very shortly with my knee, where I'm going to go in for an operation as soon as I get my pre-op assessment done. But I'd love to be able to kick again, play badminton again, play golf again, you know, all of those things. So walking is my only thing that I get enjoyment from, and it's at a certain speed that I feel won't damage my knee anymore. So I have to be very careful, but I generally do 5 miles on the Saturday and Sunday, so 5 miles Saturday, 5 miles Sunday, and a couple of miles Monday to Friday during my lunch hour. And you know, on the most part it works. It clears my mind at least. So a big shout out to the people that have commented this week. They've been Colin Jones, Cauldron, Down the Rabbit Hole, Robert Morrison, Panther, GTB Films, Ian Batchelor, Milfy, Highlander and Jambon, all very appreciated. Now, I answered most of their questions in the text of the blog itself. If you'd like me to do more of the answers to the questions in the video side of the blog, let me know. It's just sometimes I get quite excited and go, oh, I can answer that now, and I don't want to lose my train of thought. So I tend to find I'm answering your questions a little bit early. Some of them were late, actually, this week, purely because I wanted to give some thought to them. And there's one name that I haven't mentioned there, which was Martroid, and that's because his one is going to be answered in this blog. But there was a very late one that came through from my old mate, Mainmeister. We all know him, that person who can't get to level 2 in his own blog, in his own stream. He's asked me a couple of questions. So they were, how often do I play classic video games? Emphasis on classic. How do I decide which one? And do I play them real or emulation? I might have to answer these in a little bit of a haphazard way. Real or emulation? I do have real equipment, but as you can see by my room, which is slowly getting better, you can't see it yet, but it is, there is nowhere to stick the oldish equipment because it was so large and had to be connected in certain ways. So you'll tend to find if I'm playing a classic game, unless it's a classic arcade game where you use MAME, I will be playing it for emulation. I don't really have much of a choice. How do I decide which one? That's a tricky one, really, because sometimes it will be I really fancy playing that old game. It comes into my mind. I'll be listening to a podcast. I'll be listening to music when I'm doing my walks. A tune will come on. Could be Ken Tiller. It could be Forbidden Forest. It could be all of the lovely, Thing on the Springs, Monty on the Runs, all of those, Hunter Patrol. And I'll go, oh, I really fancy playing that. And then I'll make a concerted effort to load up the emulator, put in the controller and start playing. The nice thing about them is that they last minutes, probably a bit longer than Alan, because I can get to level 2 on most things. But I'll have a good blast or a good jump, depending on what type of game it is, and do it that way. But I haven't played a classic game this week. I will say that. I think I mentioned previously when I played some games, I played that Bagman not too long ago, and I played the remake of Hero and Gyrus from another site. But apart from that, I've been a bit absent from playing retro emulated computer games. So how often do I play the classic video games? Whenever I can, whenever I'm in the mood. And sometimes it's to get me out the doldrums, so you'd think I would have played one this week, but no. I've actually been so sorrowful for myself, I haven't wanted to do anything. I've sat down, fell asleep, watched a film, fell asleep, done work, and the weather's not been great. So I haven't done anything in the garden either, so that's put me in the bad books with my mum. But there we go. So what do we do after all of that? It's usually things that I've bought, watched, talked about. So let's see. Now, there's been a bit of a surge of titles that have come through the post this week. I can't control those because they're pre-ordered. But I always have a sort of slush fund of money for this stuff. So I tend to find that unless there's a huge, big surprise, I don't have a problem. But there was a big surprise this week. So, yes, thank God it was payday on Friday, and I've put that money back. So what came? These steel books again. The 4K of Robocop came in. Classic film of mine to watch. But I've watched it so many times now that it's a bit diluted. I didn't like the remake too much. I found Robocop 1 and 2 not bad. Well, 1 great, 2 not bad. The third one, ninjas and things, no. And even the TV series was watchable to awful. So Robocop's got a bit of a history for me, and I always get an enjoyment out of watching it. It seems that there is a director's and a theatrical cut, so yeah, I've seen both. I'll open it at some point. These are 2 that were very, very cheap in HMV this week, because I mentioned about Time After Time, which was bought by my mother from a charity shop, and they're called the Premium Collection. So I got intrigued and I went in there, and of course they're doing their buy 3 for £10, buy 2 for £10, whatever. So I picked up a couple of classics. Excalibur, which is one of my all-time faves. I think it's been mentioned as a fave during Mainmeister streams when he was doing his film reviews of I think it was the top 50 films that they all liked. It was quite a long stream, really enjoyable. Definitely look that one up, by the way. If you ever want to know about these podcasts I watch, all you have to do is go to Mainmeister stream, do a search, Excalibur or films. They'll pop up. Definitely worth a watch, that one. As is Excalibur. And then there was another one that is a sort of a curiosity. Albert Finney film, actually. It's called Looker. It's a sort of a science fiction type film, bit of a thriller, where models go to a plastic surgeon to get the perfect face, the perfect body, so they can be models for longer. And there's a development of a gun that freezes them time for them, because of there's a little side story going on it. Michael Crichton's got a hit and miss with films. I'm pretty sure you know who Michael Crichton is. Look him up. Jurassic Park, Westworld, I think. Yeah. Looker is one of those films where you either like the film or you didn't like the film. I found it fun, which is why I got it. James Coburn, as always, a great person to watch. Now a review. Now that's because Martroid asked me a question and said that he'd just got around to watching the new Spider-Man film, and he wanted to know my opinion of it. Well, this week, Spider-Man No Way Home Steelbook Edition came out. No shock surprise that I bought that, and I haven't bought multiple copies of it yet, but there will be a free film release, there will be a standard release and so forth that I will consider getting depending on how my funds are. But what did I think of the film? Well, the film's been out a long time now, so I don't think there's going to be any spoilers to this, but I think if you're a fan of Spider-Man, you've got to embrace a little bit about continuity, and you need to sort of like think about what you want to get out of this film. Now, the Marvel film universe for this drastically changes storylines to make them look okay in the real world. I mean, if you think about all of these characters that were developed in the 60s, they all had spandex. I don't think spandex really works in the 21st century. So with a character like Spider-Man, you have to also think to yourself, it may be dark, but you're in a stark red and blue costume. I'm going to see you. especially if your eyes are white. So you have to start thinking about how this is going to work in the films, and there have been many tries. So in the first trilogy of films, they altered things, not about the origin, but about how he swung from webs and so forth. So there is a license to change, and the first three films, they were getting very, very exciting because the first film wasn't too bad. The second film is considered an all-time classic with Doc Ock, and the third film was considered a real letdown. That was the one with Sandman and Venom, and Venom wasn't even something that the director wanted in it, who, by the way, was Sam Raimi. So, would the fourth film have improved things? We'll never know. We know that the film studios interfered an awful lot. A plot and story was designed, storyboards were designed, and the rest is history. The film never got made and got rebooted. A couple of years later, you have the reboot with Andrew Garfield. He made a couple of films, Amazing now in the title, and those were again hit and miss. The second film gets a real tongue lashing from people, and the first film not so much, but I think all was agreeable that he played a better Peter Parker, and Tobey Maguire from the first film played a better Spider-Man. So we really wanted in the third reboot, when the Marvel Universe Studios took over, an amalgamation of both to give us the definitive Spider-Man. And the problem which they had is they want a character that's going to be around for years, so they had to put the character so far back that he was back in high school, and that's going to alienate people a little bit like me that have been around reading these stories. I've been reading Spider-Man since 1972 because I now see him as a man. He's now got a job, he's in the real world. To see him go back to high school and then see him with all his high school chums, and they've all got that weird way they speak to each other and so forth, it can really grate. But they've been getting better. The first film wasn't too bad, Homecoming, as an introduction. The second film with Mysterio wasn't too bad either, but it gets a real big panning, to be quite honest. The special effects are definitely there. Sony definitely put the money in. I don't think Marvel would have liked it if they cut the budget down. So I think they have to. They put their foot down in regards to, no, if you're going to start cutting budgets, we'd rather give you the money, and push that point. So when the third film came out, it was almost like quite exciting because they were going to try and amalgamate all those two previous film sets, Tobey Maguire and Andy Garfield, into this film and tie up loose ends and try and do a Sinister Six film. Now, if you don't know what the Sinister Six are, the Sinister Six was 6 of Spider-Man's first year enemies all joining up together to say, we haven't been able to defeat him one by one, let's all join up together. Cue mass arguments, cue getting to them one at a time, and cue Spider-Man winning. So this film was supposed to tie up the film side of that, and it opened up something called the multiverse. The multiverse being, for every Earth there is another version of that Earth where at certain key points in your life a split will occur where, should I turn left, should I turn right, what if I'd have gone straight on? And if you times that by the world, you can imagine there are millions and millions and millions of multiverses. So in this particular instance, a rip occurs, and heroes and villains from the past films come into this one film. Now, they did a very, very sentimental but working answer to Spider-Man's origin, because in this Marvel Comic Universe version of Spider-Man, there's been no origin story. So we don't see Ben Parker dying and Spider-Man coming up with the lines, with great power come great responsibility. It's been absolutely absent, and there's been talk about, did that even happen? How did he get his powers? Was it through an event? And we learn in this film it was an event where power and great responsibility is mentioned in this particular film, because Ben is already dead, and in this film, spoiler by the way, Aunt May dies. So, and Aunt May dies by the Green Goblin from the first film. So, is this a good film? Yes. Is it worth watching? Yes. Do you need to be a Spider-Man fan to enjoy it? No. Do you get better enjoyment by being a Spider-Man fan of it? Yes. If I'm a die-hard comic reader, will I really get offended by this film? Yes and no, more no. How's that for an answer? I'm not Barry Norman. And if anybody knows, back in the 70s and 80s, Barry Norman did his film review. I used to love those. And why not? So that's that. So what have I been listening to? So Panther came up to me in one of the comments and basically stated that he liked the Star Trek tunes, and had I heard of Cliff Idleman? To answer your question there, Panther, of course I have. Star Trek films have been around, and the TV series, for years, and to be quite honest, I was a big fan of the TV series. So people's composers names like Alexander Courage, Sol Kaplan, Fred Steiner, Gerald Fried were well known to me because I used to love the musical cues of the TV series. So when the film came along and Jerry Goldsmith did his score, I was a big fan. So when The Undiscovered Country came along and it wasn't going to be a Jerry Goldsmith score, I was a bit worried. And I'd not heard of Cliff Idleman too much. I'd know he'd done a couple of scores beforehand. He did an absolutely fantastic job with Star Trek 6. Definitely a score to get. It's got a lot of drama in it. So after Cliff Idleman did the Star Trek score, he did the film with Steve Martin, A Simple Twist of Fate. And A Simple Twist of Fate affected me quite an awful lot because it's based on the book Silas Marnier, who's about a miser. And what you have to understand about that is I've been looking at my life and thinking, if I don't have friends, will I become that miser? Will I just settle back doing what I do to enjoy myself and become that old hermit that sits at the end of the street, and you don't go near him because he's got the spooky house, and he's a recluse. So Cliff Idleman did a fantastic score, very melodic, where a little girl enters his life and changes his life. So that's a pretty good score, Panther, if you're ever interested in that sort of thing. But going back to Star Trek, well, yes, I've got them all the scores, and I've got all the expanded scores. But just to give you a little bit of history, the first Star Trek film came out, and I bought it as an import, which is why it's got that CD number at the back. I bought that, and it's got lots of black tape. Notice that from when it comes into the country, because I got that the year it came out on CD. So it was a year or so after the film, and loved it. And then of course there have been many reissues of that, and then one of the reissues was the 20th anniversary, which I bought on the day it came out, which is one of those CD enhanced collections where you put it in a computer and you've got some bonus stuff, some text to read, some pictures to look at. Otherwise it's another release of the score, this time with some unreleased tracks, until finally we get to the expanded last reissue of the Star Trek the Motion Picture Score, which is 3 CDs, all with new cues, all with stuff that's been chucked away and never been issued, and it's one of 10,000 units. it's a quite high number, so I think you can still get it. I really, really can't say enough about Jerry Goldsmith and his scores. Star Trek's got a bit of a mix of music history, but mostly it's strong. So if you are into listening to soundtracks and so forth, I definitely recommend some of these that I've listed here. And I'll try and put some links in. And then, yesterday, a big thing occurred. The Godfather 50th year anniversary collection arrived. And I don't know quite what to say about it, other than, oh my god, it's a huge big book. It's got 4K films in there. It's got Blu-ray films on there. There is a theatrical and a new edit cut of Godfather 3 in there. There are 3 art prints which aren't individually numbered but could be framed of the heads of the family. Rosa's score is obviously fantastic. Definitely a masterclass in composing. And the films, if you like gangster films and you've got a spare 6 hours, definitely sit through them all in one go. It covers from 1972 up until the late 80s, early 90s for The Godfather 3. So Francis Ford Coppola, well, what can you say? I'm looking forward to that. It's over £100, that particular set. You can get it cheaper, and definitely if you're a gangstery type movie watcher, it's got to be a must for you to watch. And we've reached the end. I hope you enjoyed this blog. There will obviously be one next week. I'm hoping for some better news. I'm hoping for some fun in the news general. So until then, hope you enjoyed this. Please send your comments. Please look for any clips that you'll see at the bottom. And goodbye. Goodbye.